All right, moving on. The Wall Street Journal reports Michael Cohen took an aggressive approach to profit from his relationship with Donald Trump.
Who would have ever seen that coming?
They report that Cohen also offered consulting services to Ford and Uber, which both rejected his overtures. The Journal and Detroit Free Press report that Special Counsel Robert Mueller's office contacted Ford requesting information on Cohen's outreach and has interviewed Ford's head of government affairs. The Journal reports that Uber cited Cohen's New York taxi business as a potential conflict of interest when rejecting his offer, and that he then modified his approach to remind the company that he was, quote, the president's lawyer. Cohen's overall pitch was blunt, telling prospective clients that they should fire whomever was advising them and saying, quote, I have the best relationship with the president on the outside, and you need to hire me, according to a person familiar with Cohen's approach.
So Nick, this is not how business is usually done among lobbyists. I know people love to knock lobbyists, but there are rules, and there are, even for consultants, and there are a way to do things and the way not to do things. This is the way. This is for people at home that think this is how it usually happens. It is not. This is irregular, and it is wrong.
It's a parody of how Washington works in real life, right? So, yes, relationships are important in Washington, and lobbyists cloak these discussions in expertise, and they say, I'm an expert on the process, on legislation, and there's some truth in that. It's rare to get the hardcore play of simply, I have a relationship, and if you want in, you should pay me. He ran around in this really ham-fisted way. I remember hearing about it in 2017 and saying, I have the president's cell phone, I'm his friend, I can get to him. You don't usually see it that baldly stated, and in one sense it's refreshing to actually hear the proposition stated so clearly.
Pay to play, baby.
But on the other, like, it kind of runs counter to the way the K Street lobbying community has tried to cloak what it does for years and years.
Particularly for somebody not registered as a lobbyist.
So, and if not a lobbyist, Lise Jordan, lawyer or fixer? And what's the adjective before? Bumbling lawyer? Corrupt lawyer? Bumbling fixer, corrupt fixer.
Okay,
honestly,
great,
no.
I have this image of Michael Cohen just going through LinkedIn and just looking at all the different businesses who have interest in DC, and it's like, oh, well, maybe I'll put out a feeler there, and reaching out, and I mean, it honestly is a microcosm for just the level of ineptitude. I guess we should maybe be heartened that he's that inept at legalized corruption and trying to get in there as a lobbyist, but it's just a sad reflection on how everyone involved with the Trump administration, they can't even do the things that corrupt people have been able to manage. He gets caught.
Well, that takes us perfectly to our next story. President Trump's newest lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, kept up his rapid pace of comments this weekend, saying he was unsure when or even if Michael Cohen has stopped working as the president's personal lawyer. Quote, as far as we know, he's not.
He's not stopped work? Okay, so wait, we're back.
Giuliani,
this.
He told that to Politico on Friday.
Wow.
He added that the president's current legal team has never really determined a precise day when Cohen stepped away. The president referred to Cohen as one of my personal attorneys after the raid on Cohen's offices on April 9th. And then tweeted, attorney-client privilege is dead on April 10th. The White House has sidestepped questions on Cohen's status. The Wall Street Journal reports that Cohen bragged about his relationship with the president. A source said Cohen told lawyers at the firm Squire Patton Boggs he could call the boss at any time. But Giuliani characterized Trump and Cohen's conversations as being all about politics, and early on, maybe about the Russia investigation before Cohen came under scrutiny. Of Cohen's business deals, Giuliani says the president said to him, quote, I had no idea. He certainly never lobbied me. Here is the president late last month telling Fox what he knew about Cohen's work.
Michael is in business. He's really a businessman, a fairly big business as I understand it. I don't know his business, but this doesn't have to do with me. Michael is a businessman. He's got a business. He also practices law. I would say probably the big thing is his business, and they're looking at something having to do with his business. I have nothing to do with his business.
But I'm serious.
I love how he writes one word or a phrase in front of him before every interview. Sometimes it's no collusion. Mm-hmm. We're going to light the no collusion Christmas tree, no collusion. Later this afternoon, no collusion. Noon, no collusion. So this time was business. He's a businessman, business. Michael has a business. It's a big business, I think. I don't know, but I've been told it's a big business. But most of the stuff that he does has to do with business because he's a businessman. Not my business, his business, of course. And I understand it's a fairly good business, but I don't know because I don't know what his business is. So we got that from Fox and Friends. And now we have Rudy, right, taking his medals off.
Well, there's so many.
There's so many from the Queen. And
his sword.
His sword, yes, taking his sword and then saying, oh, wait, no, he could still be his lawyer. Maybe it's not about business.
Well, look, the entire problem for the president and for Cohen is this question mark around his business and where it overlaps with the president's business.
Right.
So Cohen is a guy who was flipping real estate in suspicious ways. He was buying taxi medallions. He was being a fixer. He was settling claims for the president. He was paying off affairs for the president.
Right.
So obviously part of his big business was working for the president. And part of his big business was telling companies he could get to the president. So yeah, it's not like there's this like bright line between Cohen's business. He was going to companies that were in trouble with the administration and pitching himself as a fixer to them. And, you know, it's still unclear exactly who that money was for, who was getting paid. Was it lobbying? Was it something else? We don't know.
Richard, I've got to say, a year and a half in, the incompetence of all of these people, as Elise said, I mean, they're not even good at lying. You know, it's that David Geffen quote, the Clintons are unusually good liars. Well, Donald Trump and those around him, unusually bad liars. And bad at corruption. I mean, it's just so obvious. It's just one crumb after another crumb after another crumb they leave laid out. But I just wonder how a year and a half we have a president who said he was going to hire the best people, have nothing but the best people around him. And he really is surrounded, especially in his personal dealings and his staffing around him at the White House, with the most, and history will prove this, I'm not being mean about it, it's just truth, with the most incompetent staff members around him in the White House in the history of the White House.
You've got incompetence and you've got many cases, shall we say, questionable judgment, corruption. You know, when Jeb Bush said this was going to be the chaos president, he turned out to have been prescient. It's ad hoc on steroids. You got the wrong people. Even a decision, we talked about Iran a minute ago, the idea that a decision like that would be taken without an NSC meeting.
Right.
Without an organized consideration of the pros and cons and the various considerations, that tells you something.
All right, we got to fix your mic.
Yeah.
So also,
and
by the way, the White House can't give us clarity. Can't give us clarity on what he does. I mean,
what he does, what Cohen does.
Schedule?
Yeah, on what Cohen does. You know, if they can't do that, then there's no
it changes
reason for the press office.
It changes every day.
Yeah.
And by the way,
my point is that's a question they should be able to answer.
But this is Trump and Giuliani just sort of winging it, and it's something that the staff has been complaining about for some time, John Meacham, that Trump and Giuliani just get into the room and sort of wing it. They both live in their own alternate realities at times, Trump especially. And what's unbelievable is nobody sat down in a room and said, okay, let's figure out what happened, when it happened. And even if they don't want to do the right thing, they're not even sitting down saying, okay, what's our story? What do we tell people? Mm-hmm. Giuliani has been just spitting out words now for the past 2 weeks, contradicting himself every day. This would be as if, you know, we talk about past administrations. This would be as if Jimmy Carter had Billy Carter as his personal lawyer.
Well, I mean, I think two tributaries are emerging here. One is they're both used to being the principal, right? They're both used to being the biggest person in the room. and they both think they know better. One became president by the most unconventional means possible. The other has been a worldwide celebrity, knighted by the Queen. I don't know if you know
Knighted by
that.
the Queen, he
Smarter than
says.
you.
Unlike John
And
Nixon.
also, like
Okay.
Donald Trump, he says he's very smart. He's very intelligent.
So speaking of,
Can I ask John?
But I got one more
How many
Rudy
people
story
do you
for
know? I know, but just before we get to the last Rudy story, like, what is it with both Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani that they feel they have to run around telling people how smart they are? Do you guys know people that run around saying how smart they are?
Well, I mean,
Other than Richard High, he's got a button that says "I are
you should
smart."
listen to this guy in the green room. I mean,
So he, Meacham has a T-shirt that says "Soul of America."
Does
Is that okay?
Well, he is a
Actually,
soul.
That's true. Okay.
It is
Actually,
strange,
it's a golf
though.
hat.
It
It's
is
a golf
strange.
hat, but thank you.
It's weird.
It's weird that these people run around going, "I'm so intelligent. I'm smarter than everybody," which tells you actually they're not.
Fear.
It's kind of like
Well, the more you swagger, the more insecure you are, and you protest too much. Somebody said I heard a line last weekend, and I'm not stealing it because I can't remember who said it.
Just make it up.
In this Washington, there's the West Wing, and then there's Trump, and they're not the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think now you add Giuliani, and so you have a genuine three-ring circus
Oh, my Lord.
that's going to keep going, and there's no intersection, and it's just going to be the president. I mean, when it's all over, I mean, Nixon had B.B. Rebozo.
Mm-hmm.
Trump has his telephone. I mean, that's it. This is the cell phone presidency,
Wow.
and it's very lonely. And I think that's why why we see these erratic moments is because he has no one else to have them with except all of us.
Doesn't feel like it ends well.